it's Kisha here with Defending the Early Years podcast. We'll be focusing on amplifying the voices of early childhood educators, advocates, and all of those who love children.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast with Kisha Reed. Today, I'll be talking to the wonderful Nikki Darling Korea. Nikki is the author of Brain-Based Early Learning Activities, Connecting Theory and Practice. And also, Nikki just so happens to have been a not so far away neighbor of mine, who, Nikki, I didn't even know you lived near me at the time. And I had seen your work and heard your name. And I think the way we met was so strange. I think I purchased something from you on Facebook Marketplace. And when I got to your house, you were like, and here's a book that's signed that I wrote for you because I know you're into this stuff. So that was a beautiful way to meet. Welcome to the Defending the Early Years podcast. I cannot wait to dig into this brain-based thinking with you because I am so diving into it. In particular, right now, I'm taking a play a parent coach certification and also a play therapy certification. So I'm immersed in the brain right now. So can you please just tell us a little bit about your work and your journey? And then we're going to dig into this book a little bit.
Okay. Well, I do remember that day. It was so funny. You did come purchase something, and I knew you by reputation too. And I gave you the book, and you left. And about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes later, you come running back, and you're like, "Wait a minute, this is actually you." It was so funny. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." So I'm currently at Red Leaf Press, and I feel like that is just such a beautiful story of family childcare provider working on her master's thesis and writing a book in the same 3 years. I do not recommend that generally as a practice, but I haven't met anyone in early childhood yet that doesn't do like a million different awesome, fabulous things. So I don't feel unique. I feel like I'm in great company. So I wrote this book. It's funny. It's out of print now at Red Leaf because it is over 10 years old, and our brain science definitely changes. The activities are not outdated. They're definitely still relevant for all of the right reasons. But some of the science we know more now.
It's time to write book number 2, huh?
I think so. And it's kind of funny because every time I introduce it, I'm like, my first book, which makes it sound like there's more than one. There isn't currently, but I like to be optimistic. It's a little challenging now because I am the director of the press, but it's given me a lot of opportunity, and if I did write that second book, it would be the impact of trauma on the brain. So learned a lot more. Life has just forced me into learning more, and so I want to be able to share that with others out in the world too.
Wow. And how did you get to the focus on the brain? What made you write this particular book?
So I was a non-traditional student. I think that's kind of funny, because I think traditional and non-tradition, like that's out the window these days. But say a non-traditional student. So I never technically went back to school. I consistently worked on my degree from the time I, was 18, went to college, then moved to Maryland to be a nanny. I think that was my first, that was my career entry into early childhood, but I didn't know it yet. And moved to Maryland to be a nanny, and needed to wait until I had residency to be able to get affordable tuition. And so it was like a year there, and then went to school, and then a year here to have a baby, so there really was only like 5 years, but not consecutive, where I wasn't in school. And I just kept plugging away. And one day, I had school age children, and so while they were in school, I could attend some. I was attending a brick and mortar college, and I'm sitting in the on a bench outside the library, and I'm reading this book and by Eric Jensen, and um, I'm reading this stuff about the brain, and as people are walking by, I want to stop them. Like, did you know this? Did you know this is how the brain works? Like, my mind was blown, and I just felt like everybody needed to know this.
Mhm.
Teaching with the Brain in Mind was the name of the book, and I was blown away because it was things that certainly made practical sense. I'd been a family child care provider for probably 6 years at that point, and I had my own children, and I knew a lot of this behavior, but if you'd asked me to explain it, I certainly couldn't have explained it. And that moment on that park bench, I'm pretty sure if I had started like stopping every person that walked by, they might have called security and been like, there's some middle-aged lady sitting in the park bench, like, but I'm like, everybody needs to know this. We need to know how the brain works so that we can really help children get the very best start that they possibly can in life. So that's what started it. And I felt like anything I was going to do as a family child care provider, running my business, I just wanted to be the best that I possibly could be at it. So I joined associations and went to all the training I possibly could go to, and continued to get my bachelor's degree. Then I went on to Pacific Oaks College and earned a master's degree in human development. And then after that, in around 2017, went back again to get a second master's degree in instructional design, because I wanted to be able to take everything that I'd learned and be able to really put it into professional development so that I could
Mhm.
help transfer this knowledge to other educators, because it just felt like everybody needed to know this right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Parents and educators need, for sure, because it changes your lens, right? When
Yeah,
you understand the why. And also, in the meantime, you start to understand yourself better because, face it, we're all walking around here with brains, right? This is we're talking about young children, but this is information that we could all use. It is amazing to me how many of us who have been working with children for so long and have even earned degrees and worked in classrooms and have never encountered any training or thinking about the actual child's brain, like how
right.
developmentally they work. And that, to me, that's the groundwork. If you understand that, it will totally shift the way that we work with young children, the way that we spend our time with young children. So from the moment you saw that book to the moment you wrote your own book, what did that process look like? Because I know that there are so many people out there with these stories or with this knowledge that want to amplify and get this information directly in the hands of parents, of educators, of policymakers, even. What is that process like?
Well, I think, I mean, it's certainly a different journey for everyone. But um, I think just finding opportunities like your podcast, brilliant way to be able to share information. At Red Leaf Press, we do distribute, we produce really fantastic products, resources for early childhood educators. We are a nonprofit and not here to I would be bragging about Red Leaf even if I weren't there, because it is just such a dedicated organization for over 52 years, and family childcare is a particularly beloved um, setting of early care and education that we want to bolster and encourage.
Yeah.
And but I have thought about writing and will write a book that not necessarily based on early childhood, but more focused on my personal experiences with trauma. And we have literary agents that we do work with. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, listen, I just want to ask you some questions off the record, not official to Red Leaf, but if I wanted to write a book, how hard would it be to, like a main mainstream, but like not an education book. Like what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
And they said the big 5 publishers won't even talk to you unless you have 500,000 social media followers. And I was like,
wow.
I have like 500 friends on Facebook, like what does that mean? And last year, also an organization in Minnesota, which is where our headquarters are, but they were doing a conference and like, oh, Nikki, we would really be interested in having you submit a proposal to be the keynote. And so I did. And then I wasn't selected. And I was asking them, after the fact, like I wasn't, I wasn't hurt. My feelings weren't hurt, but I was just like, what went into the process? And they said, the committee couldn't find you on social media. They couldn't find promos or videos, or they couldn't like see you in action.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind because I'm like, I've been doing this for 30 years. Like, what do you mean?
That's the new thing. And
right.
that's the new thing. And it's scary because I feel like there are a lot of organizations that I have in the past trusted that are hiring these very popular social media, gimmicky comedian, like misinformation passing folks. And if that's the measure, then we're doomed.
That's kind of how I felt. And I said, well, that's your prerogative. But, I can't imagine Louise Derman Sparks, doing TikTok in order to get people to want to invite her, she's a legend. And I think about all of the individuals that I looked up to, Margie Carter, Deb Curtis, and that it's not a coincidence that my heroes are from Pacific Oaks College. That's what why I chose to go there, focused on social justice and being able to, make the world a better place, one little tiny human at a time. So I get that that's where we are now, but also I'm old. I've been on the planet a long time. Trends change, fads change, like write it out. I've tried to, I feel like, yes, that's the moment. That's where we are now. That would be very beneficial. So if I want to reach the audience now, certainly for young parents, like the older I get, the further away from technology. Like our digital natives are going to only want more of it in this world. So that's I believe in evolution. So you either adapt or die, so you have to be able to try that. So I'm not, out there doing TikTok videos and stuff like that, but I appreciate them. And I think that they're fun, but you are so spot on that I cringe sometimes. And I've seen, our fellow, defenders of early childhood posting on social media like this video went viral, but it's not accurate, so please don't keep, like it had the right hook, but the information was wrong. And once it's out there, you just can never put the genie back in the bottle, and it's becoming harder and harder to get the real information out there, to help people. So I haven't quite found the answer to that yet, but I'm not going to quit trying. I'm going to keep trying, but I'm still going to keep publishing books. Like our books, people always say like, oh, well, because everybody can get everything digital now, our book's going to go out of, our book's going to be a thing in the future. And I said, well, once the escalator was built, people didn't quit taking the stairs, or because stairs are still needed.
They're still needed. And I think in early childhood, at least the folks I know, we hold the books dear to our heart. I need to highlight, I need to put little pieces of paper in pages, I need to underline, take notes on the side. Like those are things that I can't do with a digital book. I need to really like immerse myself in the information that's in a book that I'm reading. So I hope that doesn't go away.
Yeah, well, it certainly won't at our place. We do print ebook, like for every book that we print, we also have an ebook version for those learners, but it's never intended to replace it. In fact, I remember when my book did come out in 2010 and was talking to my aunt about it, and she's like, well, I went online to buy it, but they didn't have an ebook version then. And she's like, if it's not an ebook, I'm not going to buy it. When do you think they'll have an ebook out? And I said, I hope never, because it was an activity book. And I'm like, you want it on the table. You know what recipes I trust? Even if I find a recipe online that I like, I still print it out and put it in a notebook, and it's got flour on it, or it's got greasy finger, like I've got to have that right there. So if it's an activity book and I'm learning like, oh, this is how we do this activity, I just like you, I have to have that tactile experience. I have to have it in front of me. I have to, be able to have that connection. And also I want to be a good model for all of the children in my life. And I want to see them, like if it's nap time or breaks or whatever, if I'm occupying my time with something, I want them to see me holding a book, not a digital device. And
now, on that day when you were sitting on that bench and your mind was blown, do you remember, and even still today, do you remember some information that you've obtained that made up your aha moment? What was it that really struck you? What about the brain pulls you in?
Well, that moment on the park bench, so the thing that I can't say was in that particular moment, but it sums it up, is that the brain stores emotional memory first. And so when we have those emotional connections with something, if I asked you some random day, like, what were you doing on June 13th, 1989? What would you say?
No clue.
Right. But if I said, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001?
Yeah. I would know exactly.
You would know where you were sitting when you heard the news.
Yep.
So I've used this example as I've done this training now for, sadly, 20 years doing this. But I asked that question, and it doesn't matter if I ask the question from Alaska to Maine to San Diego to Florida. You ask people and they'll tell you that the sky was blue. Now, why should I believe them when we know that bystander recollection, asking people to recall, like it's the most, the least reliable source if you're asking eyewitnesses to recall something, because if it didn't have that strong of an emotional connection, they're just not going to remember. Like, there's been so many studies that have been done, and you ask people like, what did you see? And it's like, oh, it was a blue car with a woman driving with a blue hat. And in reality, it was none of those things. But when it comes to September 11th, because the impact of that experience was so profound and so emotional and changed our world forever, when people say the sky is blue, I believe them, because they were looking up. Planes had been used as weapons, and everybody was looking towards the sky. And if you go back and look at weather reports, and I did when it was close around, like you look at a map, there was no cloud coverage across the entire United States. Like there was no reason to believe that the sky wasn't blue. And therefore those recollections of it were so profound. Now, if you ask, if I had said that random date in June that I can't even remember now,
no clue.
But if that had been like, if it had been your birthday or the day that your grandmother died, or, a child was born, like then you'd be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly where I was because this is what happened to me. So as I'm sitting on that bench and I'm reading this information, the thing that struck me the most about it is how we do so much that's counter to the way our brain works. And the most profound, I think, from that book is I'm reading about high schoolers and how, and there've been studies and there've been tests, but it never sticks. Like if you delayed the start of high school by 90 minutes or even 75 minutes, to have them have a bit of a later start, they would actually do better. And there's in every decade, it seems to be that there's this study that's been done, and one just came out. I think it was in the UK, but I just heard about it the other day and need to go look it up. But once again, it's in the media saying, hey, if you delay the start, if we get our high schoolers, because they're the stage of development that they're in, their sleep pattern, their like a chronotype, like the timing that your body needs, they're more awake and paying attention later. But the reason, so we've made these decisions based on everything but the brain. The reason why it was
Mm-hmm.
done that way, the reason why our high schoolers go early is because they had to harvest the fields, or they had to go to part-time jobs, or they had to, there's a lot of sports activities, and we don't have enough resources, so we have to get the high schoolers, started for all of these things. Have nothing to do with the brain and how children learn. And what these studies show that is, if you did it in the reverse, if you sent younger children, because they're, have you ever known, like, I don't know, a 6-year-old to sleep past 6,
6
like they're
a.m.
up,
Yeah.
like, I'm ready to go, it's a new day, let's go. And then hold on to them for 3 hours before we send them to school, and then they're out of energy, they're
I
ready
was
for
about
a
to
nap.
say, by then they're ready for a nap.
Exactly. So we do so much, and I could really compare this to a lot of things that we do that are against our self-interest. But when it comes to the brain, it's like, if we know this, here's a book telling us this. If we know this, why do we still do things that are counter to that? And I don't have an answer, but that's still the question.
Mhm.
So when these studies come out that this one particular school or district or whatever had changed the starting time, and scores go up, and behavior is better, and all of the things that you would measure in um, effective education
Mental
improves,
health.
right, by changing the time they start school. And you would think, like, that's such an easy thing, but school districts, well, these are the buses, and this is the way, like,
Yeah.
nobody wants to do that. But they want to put all that pressure really then on the teacher, like, okay, teacher, make sure that you're meeting all these metrics and this, that, the other, and then when you don't, you're going to be penalized, and the children still don't get what they want, or not what
Hmm.
they want, but what they
What they
need.
need, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And I think books like yours need to be put in the right hands, because a lot of times it's a case of, if you don't know, you don't know. We get in
Right.
this cycle of doing what we've always done, and like you just said, there is even fresher, new research on the brain. The more technologically advanced we get as people, the more we learn about our brain, the more we learn about how we work. The problem is, the more we learn about how we work in our brain, I don't see the changes happening that reflect that. So
Right.
that's like the magic question. How do we do the work to amplify this information and then push for change? Like, when we know better, we have to do better. So
Right.
how do we do that? What do you think is the steps that we need to take to start making those changes that align with what we know about the brain?
I wish this was a different era we were in to answer that question, because right now, having the will of those in power to make decisions, this is not the right time.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
there has to be the will of the people who make the decisions, and right now we're being. I certainly don't want to make this be political, but I'm just addressing the
Mhm.
challenges that we have. That
Yeah.
when you have a piece of information that you know to be true, that there is um, compounded, comprehensive, there's evidence in that disputes all the things that we do, and yet we're not going to do that right now because we have a different agenda. Not we as me, but as an administration. So in order to make changes that would be systemic, you do need those people that are those gatekeepers or stakeholders. I don't really consider them stakeholders, more gatekeepers, because a stakeholder means that they
Mhm.
have an invested interest in being able to help children have better outcomes. But if we are not even requiring that children have vaccines now and sending children to
Yeah.
school that can, I just feel like maybe my next book will be like, what was that book called? In the Time of Cholera, like, okay,
Mhm.
well, we're going to go back to that again because
Mhm.
people, we're not requiring that our children be vaccinated and taking really practical steps. Like we really thought we turned a corner on that. Didn't think we'd
Yeah.
have to go back to doing that. But that's really the point is like, okay, so if we know that if you sent children to school later, then they would have a better chance of having their brain develop in the way they're working and being able to retain and record information and not so sleepy. But it I, I don't have an answer. Sorry. I wish I
Yeah.
had some magic thing.
It's
But
not an easy feat, is it? And one of the things that that I usually try to tell programs administrators and different people who I've worked with is to find a small teeny change, something that's not so scary, because sometimes change is scary for people. So find a small place to start and then build from there. So if you were going to tell a program like mine, somebody who works with young children, I know your book is specific to children 0 to 8. If you were going to tell a program like mine who really wants to shift to a more brain focused philosophy, what would you give them as advice of where to start? Like what is one simple shift that can be made um, to get them started on the journey that is brain-based, a brain-based journey?
well, as you were talking, a whole bunch of ideas were flooding my brain, so I don't know that it's just going to be one. So let me
Give
just,
me all you
I'll just,
got.
I'll just roll it out here. So, I a number of years ago, I was working at 0 to 3 and doing research. My job there was really in the professional development area that we were working in. We would translate the science. So we would take what's happening in brain science, social emotional learning, and then we would translate it into information that educators could really use. And I'm doing some research outside of just early education, but like what's going on in the world. And I came across this article that talked about. And I'm not going to get the names right. I don't recall those names. I've experienced trauma since then, and menopause. I don't have a very strong brain in terms of remembering certain details, but I do know the gist of it. And the gist of it is this: that there was they'd hired this new coach to run the UK's cycling team, and they wanted to win the Tour de France in 5 years. And so this guy came in and said, I'm certain that I can do this. And he changed everything that the cyclists were doing. They changed one thing, or maybe not just one thing, but like marginal gains is what he called them. So they changed the kinds of like lotion they would use on their hands so they didn't get cracked skin. They traveled with the same pillow so that their necks didn't have to adjust to different pillows in different hotels. They made these really tiny, tiny changes in everything they did. Now, did they end up winning the Tour de France in 5 years? No, they did it in 3.
Mm,
And what his takeaway from this is aggregated marginal gains. If you add up all those little tiny changes, they can have a profound impact. So it's not that we just make one change, like we change the start of school time, and that's a reference for not early childhood programs, but I'm just comparing it back to the science about teenagers.
yes.
But in our early programs, not every child, like we still have different chronotypes. Like you could be an early chronotype, and this comes from our evolution. Like there are some people that are night owls, right? Like we ask, are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? And we've been, we've evolved as these kinds um, John Medina, who wrote Brain Rules, talks about how somebody had to stay up and protect the herd. Like there was some are humans. There are some people who are night owls for that reason. And so understanding that you might have a baby who isn't that interested in taking a nap at the same time that other children are interested in taking a nap.
Yes.
And I did family childcare for 16 years. And I know you're like, but it's more convenient if they all sleep at the same time. Now, not a tiny infant. We know they'll sleep on, you can't really do anything. They're sleeping. But then when it comes to like our little, like, okay, everybody from 2 to whatever, like, nap time is going to be this time. And it becomes really, really difficult because you need that break. You need them all sleeping. You can't have some sleeping and some interchange, and you need that break in a, 12, 15-hour day or whatever. But being able to acknowledge that sleep may not be the primary goal for that particular child, like maybe during that time at 1 o'clock, they're not ready for sleep, but they, quiet down, stay on your mat. You still need a rest time, but not stressing over that, like keeping them safe and keeping them calm and giving them a rest period. That's still important for their development, but not stressing over the fact if they slept or not.
And I even push that a little bit further because in my experience, if we are working with children in ways that they have learned to listen to their own body, and we've developed a community of respect, a magic thing happens, right? A magic thing happens where the children who need rest, and the children who need to move and be awake and maybe rest at a different time, do that. And it really works and it really happens and all needs can be met. And I think that is when we strip our mind of, and this goes back to the family childcare aspect. I started as family childcare. Well, I started working in centers, but then I went to family childcare and I ran a family childcare program. But when we look at families and we look at mixed age grouping and we look at people meeting their personal needs, it doesn't look like institutions, right? It doesn't look like everybody at this time has to do this. Everyone at this space has to do this. And I think it wouldn't be that small change we're talking about. What you're saying is that's a small change, the mindset and the understanding that everyone's not going to sleep. But that can grow into the big change of totally shifting our lens on nap time and other bodily needs, whether it be like food intake, eating when your body tells you you're hungry, when your brain tells you you're hungry, when your brain needs it, versus a set time when everyone has to sit down. You got 30 minutes, eat your food, clean it up, move on to the next thing. I think we need to start thinking of how we can shift the model. And it goes back to the whole idea of change is hard, with the same idea of the changing the hours of school. Change is hard. We've always done it this way. This works. All those fears that people talk about, but it really would be a service to children for us to kind of clear our brain and rebuild based on the new information that we have about how the brain works and what the brain needs.
You're right. And I think the comment of like, what do you share with people? Because it is hard. And I don't think that there's any person out there who needs any more guilt about like, if I'm not doing this, I'm not doing it right. And so being like, you may not be able to make all of these changes for whatever the reason, but being more mindful of it and being aware of it. If you took adults and like on a Saturday when it's not like a work day and there's maybe not the same kind of schedule, and let's say you're walking over to the fridge and it's 10:15 and you decide that you want, I don't know, to make a bologna sandwich at 10:15 and somebody comes over and like snatches it out of your hand and is like, nope, you have to wait 2 hours, like you cannot have a bologna sandwich right now, like that's not what we're doing right now. Chop, pay attention. If we did to adults some of the things that we do to children, it would be, we wouldn't stand for it, right? But here you have these little people who may or may not actually be hungry at the time. You bring in a sleepy toddler and plop them at the breakfast table and they're not even awake yet, because maybe they are a late chronotype and they didn't, they slept at a different time, and so they're still sleepy at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're not ready to eat that breakfast, and so they don't eat. But because they're not given the opportunity to eat at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, by the time it gets to lunchtime, they might be really hangry. Now you've got behavior problems, and they're like acting out, and it's like, why? And it's like the same reason I get hangry. Like when if you snatch that bologna sandwich out of my hand at 10:15 and made me wait another couple of hours, by then I'm going to be resentful of you, and I'm going to be like, I'm not eating the sandwich now. I wanted it, an hour ago. Not that it's manipulative, but your body says, like, how come you didn't give me what I needed when I needed it? And that does something. Then it begins to really affect that social emotional. So what it says is, okay, tall person, adult, you don't respect me. You don't think that I'm capable of learning to adjust what my body needs. And I may not be able to trust you now. And so it starts with something so simple.
And it starts to shift the brain to them not trusting themselves, right? Because we're the model. And if we're modeling mistrust, and if we're modeling not listening to your own voice, they learn to not listen to their own voice and to wait for the adult and wait for us to tell them when they need to do things. And I think that's the brain part, right? It starts to shift their self-image and what they believe about themselves. But honestly, Nikki, we could go on and on and on, but we have come to the end of the road, and I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to share with people how they can get in touch with you if they wanted to, where they can get your book from. If you have any of that information, let us know now.
Sure. So the easiest way, I mean, you can find me on Facebook if you're looking for me personally. I can spell my last name, Darling, DARLING -KURIA. You can find me on Facebook. You can friend me that way if you're interested. Redleafpress.org is where you could find out about our fantastic resources. And I'm also the director of Think Small Institute, and we have professional development that is based in anti-racist pedagogy and focused through a trauma-informed lens. And ThinkSmall.org is the other organization. But I encourage people to just make a plan to change one thing, those aggregated marginal gains, and listen to what your own body is saying and tune into that. And it will really have a profound impact on how you begin to see the rest of the world and see how children are very capable of being partners and helping make those plans for themselves.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Everybody, Nikki Darling, Korea, brain-based early learning activities, connecting theory with practice. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And that was another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. Defending the Early Years works to support the rights and needs of young children nationally. Learn more at DEY.org. Pay us a visit, sign up for our newsletter, or connect with us on social media. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.